The Book of Job, it's one of the most ancient and honestly profound stories ever told. And it grapples with this one question that has haunted humanity for millennia. And that's the question we're going to unpack right now. At its heart, the entire story orbits this single, agonizing question. It's about the problem of evil, about divine justice, and let's be honest, it's a question pretty much all of us have asked ourselves at some point. All right, so let's get into it. The story, it doesn't actually begin with suffering. Nope. It begins with a picture of what looks like absolute perfection. So we meet this guy, Job. He's described as like blameless and upright. He's got it all. A huge family, immense wealth, and this great reputation for being a really devout man. By every single measure, he is a good person living a blessed life. Then the whole scene just shifts up to the heavens. God points out how righteous Job is to a figure called the adversary. Now, it's interesting. In Hebrew, the word is Hasatan, which is really more of a title, like the accuser, than a personal name. Anyway, this adversary argues that Job's faith isn't genuine. It's just a byproduct of all his good fortune. He makes a wager, take away the blessings, and Job will curse God right to his face. And just like that, the test begins. In this rapid, absolutely devastating series of events, Job loses everything. His livestock are stolen, his servants killed, and in one horrific moment, all 10 of his children die. And yet, Job doesn't curse God. So the adversary doubles down, and Job is struck with these painful, disfiguring boils from his head to his toes. I mean, his suffering is so extreme that even his own wife, seeing him sitting there in the ashes, just tells him to give up, curse God, and end his misery. But Job refuses. He asks her, "Shall we receive the good at the hand of God and not receive the bad?"
So what happens next? Well, as Job is just wasting away, 3 of his friends arrive, supposedly to comfort him. But their idea of comfort pretty quickly turns into a fierce, painful debate that makes up the bulk of the book.
Now, to understand where his friends are coming from, you have to get this one core principle: retributive justice. It's a really neat and tidy worldview where the universe is morally ordered. If you're good, you get blessed. If you're bad, you get punished. Simple.
And this is where the central conflict just explodes. The friends apply their rigid formula. Job, you're suffering horribly, so you must have committed some secret terrible sin. Just confess. But Job knows he's innocent. And this is where his faith is truly pushed to the limit. He argues back, saying if he's innocent and God is just, then this suffering makes absolutely no sense. So he concludes that God must be acting like an enemy, hostile and destructive. After chapter upon chapter of this agonizing back and forth, Job has had enough. He demands a direct answer from God. He wants his day in court. And then, all of a sudden, he gets a response, but it is not at all what he expected. God speaks from a whirlwind, and here's the thing. He doesn't answer Job's question about why he's suffering. Instead, God starts firing off his own questions, dozens of them. He contrasts Job's limited, tiny human perspective with the vast, complex, and wild wisdom it takes to run the cosmos. God never defends his justice, he demonstrates his transcendent wisdom. Faced with this display of raw divine power and wisdom, Job's whole perspective just shatters. He realizes he was arguing from a place of ignorance, demanding answers to questions that were way beyond his comprehension. He confesses, "I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you." His demand for justice just transforms into humble repentance. But for many readers, especially in the Christian tradition, the story doesn't really end there. They see a hidden pattern woven into the narrative, a pattern that points towards something or someone much, much bigger. This way of reading is called typology. It's the idea that God designed certain people, events, and institutions in the Old Testament to serve as, well, previews, like foreshadowing, that finds its ultimate fulfillment in the story of Jesus. And this approach is actually grounded in the teachings of Jesus himself. In the Gospels, he claims that the entire Old Testament, what he calls the Law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms, was ultimately written about his own suffering and the glory that would follow. So when we look at Job's story through this typological lens, some really striking parallels to the life of Jesus start to emerge. The connections are really compelling. Think about it. Both Job and Jesus were righteous sufferers who endured pain they didn't deserve. Both were falsely accused by those around them and faced direct satanic opposition. Their stories both follow this pattern of peril leading to deliverance. And both acted as priests or intercessors, Job praying for his friends and Jesus, of course, interceding for all of humanity. But a key part of typology is this idea of escalation. The foreshadowing is always less than the fulfillment. So while Job was a righteous man who suffered, Jesus is seen as the perfectly righteous Son of God. Job suffered as a test, but Jesus suffered for the sake of others. The pattern repeats, but it also intensifies. And the story's conclusion fits this pattern perfectly. After his trial, Job is restored and his fortunes are doubled. It's a powerful picture of suffering followed by vindication and glory, a pattern that Christians see as the ultimate shape of Jesus' own story. Crucifixion followed by resurrection and exaltation. So, we come full circle. The book starts by challenging the simple idea that suffering is always a punishment for sin, but it ends by leaving us with an even deeper question to ponder. If our suffering isn't just a simple equation of divine justice, what else might it be? A test? A pattern? A mystery we can only see through the lens of a much larger story? That's the incredible question Job leaves us with.